figure out ultimately what is.
It's still a mystery as to why it took them. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Prime Time Crime. I'm Lauren Conlin, and this is my co-host, Jarrett Ferrantino. Hi, Jarrett.
Hey, Lauren, how are you?
I'm doing great. So as you guys can all see, we are not live tonight. We had a little bit of a conflict, but it's all good. It's all good. We obviously wanted to give you an episode because we have a lot to cover tonight. So what we're going to be focusing on tonight is the Delphi case. Jarrett is very, very much up to speed on that. And there's a lot of things happening with that case and Richard Allen, and it's crazy. And we're also going to talk about the latest in the case, the murder case against Keefe D, who is on trial, or who will be on trial in November for his alleged involvement in the 1996 shooting of Tupac Shakur. So I always hate pronouncing Tupac's name. I'm sorry. I feel like I never say it right. I don't know. Did I say it right? Was that?
I think he's like Madonna, Cher. You just say Tupac. I think everybody knows who you mean.
Okay, but I feel like when you're kind of reporting on it, you have to say Shakur. I don't.
Not me. He's always Tupac to me. I'm good. I'm good with just the Tupac.
Okay, fine. So Tupac. So let's get into this, because I feel like I've made a lot of mistakes in terms of some of my commentary with what's going on. And I don't mean facts. I have not made mistakes with the facts. I've made mistakes with my opinions. And I've changed my mind on a few things after talking to people in law enforcement and people that have investigated cases that might be decades old. And maybe you have experience in this, but I want to just go back, give everybody just some background. Tupac died in 1996 in Las Vegas, Nevada. He was last seen at the MGM Hotel. There was a fight that broke out. There was a Mike Tyson fight that night. And what happened during that fight that was caught on camera was that Keefe D, his nephew, Orlando Anderson, they are part of the Southside Crips, this gang. And this gang, at the time, there were some bounties on these medallions, these death row medallions, and death row is the record label that Suge Knight ran or runs from prison. I mean, I'm actually not even certain if he still runs that from prison, but I know that he has people. But anyway, so there was a bounty on getting these medallions from different death row executives and different gang members. So allegedly, Orlando Anderson stole one of these medallions off somebody that was associates with Tupac, and this fight broke out in retaliation. And then after that, and again, multiple things can be true. We know in the gang world, and I know I sound stupid sitting here with my pearls on talking about gang life, but we know that multiple things can be true in terms of you can talk about wanting to kill someone or put a hit on someone, but you don't necessarily have to plan the exact date and time like you're part of the Genovese family or what have you. It's more like, hey, they just attacked us. Now's a perfect time to do what we got to do. So they leave the MGM. They're going to Club 662. This is Tupac and Suge, and 662 is Tupac's club. He's going to go perform there. He pulls up to a stoplight. Some girls in a car pull up next to them. And, we know this to be true because these women have, spoken out before and gave their testimony. And Suge has said this as well. And they're invited to the club. And then, they move on. And in a white Cadillac pulling up next to Suge and Tupac is Orlando Anderson, Terrence Brown, Keefe D, and there's one other guy. I'm blanking on his name right now, but the driver's Terrence Brown.
It's Dre. It's DeAndre.
Thank you. Okay. I don't know his DeAndre. I don't know his last name, but it's in. I can put a link out to all of the court filings that I have because his name is in the original indictment. But pull up, and supposedly they were like, great, we can get this shot. And Keefe D gave his nephew, Orlando Anderson, the gun, and Orlando Anderson pulled the trigger. Everybody in that car, the white Cadillac, by the way, is deceased. So except for Keefe D. And we know they never found the weapon. They never found the car, whatever. So Keefe D, since then, what we know that has emerged or come to light in the last few decades is Keefe D has always bragged about his involvement, and he has made a lot of money off of it. He wrote a book. He wrote an autobiography. He did a documentary. I mean, you just go on YouTube and you search Vlad TV, and he's just running his mouth. So when he finally got charged, I think many people were surprised, but at this point, I'm not certain the evidence they have is going to be enough to convict him. And I'll tell you what else. I mean, and what's happened between the September 2023 grand jury, the indictment, the charging till now, when he tried to post bail last month and he got denied bail. But essentially, Keefe D was a proffer, 2009. For the LAPD. He had a bunch of drug charges that were against him. And like his rap sheet is literally longer than my CVS receipt. It's insane. My CVS receipt when I'm PMSing, okay, whatever. It's like, it's bad, his rap sheet. So he was like, okay, yeah, like help me out here. I'll help you guys out. And so he told them a lot of information about Tupac and also about Biggie, thinking that it would never see the light of day. And apparently in these proffer agreements, Jarrett, you obviously know better than I do, you both have to hold up your end of the bargain. So Keefe D wasn't really supposed to continue talking about Tupac and what happened. He was supposed to keep his mouth shut. So I'm speculating at this point, this is why they broke this proffer agreement recently and allowed this evidence to come into this 179-page document that was filed on July 18th, 2024 by the state, which included, this is a document that included Puffy. He was known as Puffy then, his name 77 times. And Keefe D alleged that they were at a party in Compton, California. Diddy said, what I wouldn't give for Suge's head, for Tupac's head. And Eric Zip Martin, who now is deceased, said, yeah, we can do that. Like Keefe D is like, yeah, the two of us can do this. And when Tupac was shot, allegedly, Puffy called Keefe D and said, hey, was that us? Was that the Southside Crips? And he said, yeah. And Keefe D has stated he never got this $1 million that Diddy said he would pay for Suge and Tupac, but he claims that Eric Zip Martin got it. And pretty much at this point, I'll just wrap this up. I've been talking for 8 minutes straight. Are you having a nice break here? But at this point, the state found that Keefe D's wife, Paula Clemens, there's receipts of her booking the a hotel. It's the Park MGM now. I believe it was the it's like on the tip of my tongue. It's gonna bother me, but it's a different hotel. I'll remember it. But September 7th, she booked this room, 1996. So they're placing Paula Clemens in Vegas, and then they're also placing Orlando Anderson in Vegas, September 7th. Obviously, there's the MGM footage, but they also have hotel receipts from the Excelsior Hotel. Oh, the Monte Carlo. Thank you. Monte Carlo is what it was. So
Lauren, let me say this. So there's a lot there, and you may be saying to yourself, and people that have been following this may say, well, who cares if they get a receipt from Keefe D's wife? He admitted to doing this. And let's talk about the proffer first. So basically, Keefe D is a suspect in the murder of Tupac Shakur. And this is how he danced into their focus. LAPD in 2009. Now remember, 2009 was a long time ago, but 1996 was even longer. So you're 13 years removed from this murder then. The LAPD is being sued by Biggie's estate, okay? And so basically a task force is formed around that time to solve Biggie's murder. And in solving Biggie's murder, they stumble upon the information they have on Keefe D. they then begin this massive drug investigation into Keefe D and his entire family. So then at some point, LAPD detectives confront Keefe D and say, look, dude, we got you. Like, here's what we have. We have these members of your family. You're looking at 25 to life if we arrest you and charge you just with these drug charges before we even address the Tupac Shakur thing. So they enter into what's called a proffer agreement, where the government, the federal government, was involved in this as well. So you had the federal agencies and the LAPD say, hey, Keefe, you tell us about your drug operation. You tell us what happened to Tupac Shakur, okay? And we will not charge you with either. He literally gets away with murder. So he provides the information that he has been telling people both before and after. He basically says, we're at the MGM that night. A fight breaks out with my nephew and Tupac Shakur. We eventually find them in traffic, at which after a Tyson fight or after any boxing match or UFC fight in Vegas, it's bedlam out there, right? So they somehow get to the BMW with Tupac and Suge in it. They approach the car, a gun. Keefe gives his nephew Orlando the gun. They fire 7 shots, 4 go into the BMW at this point. One or multiple shots hitting Tupac, killing him, ultimately leading to his death. Suge gets something in his head. They don't know if it's a metal slug or a bullet fragment. The bottom line is this is the information that Keefe D provides to the investigators during his proffer. Okay, why are we here now in 2023? Lauren, you said Keefe didn't keep up his end of the bargain because he kept talking about it. That's partially true.
Profiting off of it as well.
It's partially true that he kept talking about it, but the key to a proffer agreement is you can't use the information you secure in that agreement if the person is being truthful against them, okay? And if that person independently speaks to other people and keeps talking, you can use that against them. So what happened was the proffer and the information that was sacrosanct contained in the proffer was tainted because Keefe just kept telling anybody who would listen, this is what happened. So you would say, fine, we won't use anything Keefe said in the proffer, but we're going to use what he said in this documentary, what he said in the book, what he said in this recorded phone call. All of a sudden, you have all these confessions. But then the question becomes, fine, okay, you got him. Arrest him, lock him up, and throw away the key. Isn't that enough? And you made an important statement. There's receipts that in 1996 they were there. There's video footage of the fight inside the MGM.
But not with Keefe D. That's the problem.
But again, here's the thing. What Keefe provided investigators was consistent. Orlando gets in the fight with Tupac. And here's why you need that stuff, though. There's a thing called a corpus delicti, okay? I can come into a police headquarters and say, I killed Jimmy Hoffa, okay? And I could admit to that. I wasn't even alive then, okay? I was nowhere near Detroit when Jimmy Hoffa disappeared. So the fact that Keefe admits to this is only part of the equation. You need to show that Keefe was in a position to commit this crime. So you have his statement. There's few things more powerful than an admission as far as how compelling it can be in that courtroom by a defendant, okay? It's huge. A recorded admission, and I understand there's a lot of science and psychological and mental health testimony about admissions that aren't voluntary and things of that nature. It's very powerful stuff. Now take that admission and build your case and your evidence around it. It's not enough just for Keefe to say it. You got to get those receipts. You got to trace that car. You got to tie in the caliber of the gun. All the things you're doing, and I've said it before, you're building a wall of credibility against Keefe, but in support of what he told you. I mean, that's what you're doing.
But my question here, Jarrett, is it's not necessarily a question as maybe a statement as well. Yes, they need all that, but they're not going to get it at this point. I mean, the fact that it took them how long to get these hotel receipts? And look, they made a statement like, we weren't really looking for the name Paula Clements. We were looking for gang related names. We weren't looking for her name. That's why it took so long. You're not looking through computers, you're looking through paperwork. And so at the time when they had this, I was like, oh, done deal. All they have to do is find surveillance footage from 30 years ago of Keefe D walking down the
Good
street
luck.
in Vegas. Yeah. So that's my point, where I'm like, yes, he said all this. Everything points to him, including himself, but that doesn't matter. I hate to say it, the truth doesn't matter. What matters is what you can prove in court. And if they don't get this footage, what happens to their case? Like, what would you
Well,
got?
I mean, it's
Yeah,
not
like,
ideal without it, but there's a lot of things. So Las Vegas PD was very highly criticized for their handling of this case. LAPD and Vegas kind of had a piss and match over this thing. There were a lot of people who felt like Vegas PD left something to be desired. Now, here's the difficulty in these cases. I've had gang shootings before. I've been in the hospitals standing over a hospital bed where a shooting victim tells me to go F myself. I'm not telling you shit. And it's like, okay, so good luck investigating that when your victim won't identify who shot me. Tupac actually wrote a song called Who Shot Me, right? So
that's Biggie, I thought.
no, I think it's Tupac.
No, it's definitely Biggie who shot you. It's fine.
Oh,
It's
that's
fine.
right. Oh, that's
Yeah,
right.
it's totally
I'm sorry.
fine. Well,
But we were close to working together at that point, weren't they?
yeah, maybe.
Okay.
Also, Tupac, when they asked him in the hospital, it's this could be a conspiracy theory, but he allegedly said "F you" when he was asked.
Well,
So,
and again, that is very so. Here's the thing about that culture and the gang culture in the late 90s and through today. There is a code that you don't talk to law enforcement, even if you're a victim. You just never provide information to law enforcement. Okay, now your eyewitnesses to these incidents are gang members. They're not going to provide you with information. Shug provided a little bit of information, didn't name names, was very ambiguous, didn't know shit. So all of a sudden, that's your first problem. The second thing is if there's the girls that were in that car that saw them, that pulled up, nobody wants to get involved in this because this crime set off shootings for days. I mean, obviously we talk about Tupac, but there were a lot of shootings after this that were the result of this. And this, you know, you have the death row records fight with Bad Boy and all this stuff, right? So, but it goes deeper than that. This is the blood and Crip fight that's been going on for years and years and years. And this was something that really sparked that fight. So you have civilians who are hesitant to get involved. That complicates a case, clearly.
yeah, definitely. I think that so many people want justice for Tupac that they are rooting for the police. People that normally wouldn't root for the police are like, "Oh my gosh, we want you to do so well." And it's also been stated, I don't know if you read this, but Tupac's family has obtained Alex Spiro, who represented Alec Baldwin, for a civil suit possibly against Diddy, after hearing that Diddy, not a suspect, might have been involved in the orchestration of the shooting. And again, he's not a suspect. We just know he was named in this filing from July. But I mean, I know that, you know, you can charge someone with murder. There's no statute there in Nevada. But what about wrongful death here? It seems like you can't do anything with that after it's been.
Well, you can if the information was not available to these folks prior. So you have Tupac's family members that are looking to pursue a claim. The statute of limitations on a wrongful death can be told or extended. Told is a lawyer word. Extended if you don't have the information. If there was fraud and withholding. So like there are cases like the Drexel case that went on for 13 years. No one knew what happened to Brittany Drexel until the arrest happens. 13 years later, you now know how and what happened. Okay, so there was information not known to Tupac's family during the typical statute of limitations for such a claim. So it's extended when information is kept from you and you learn it, and then they have 2 years from the time they learn the information to pursue a claim.
Okay.
So
well, that makes sense.
And then we had talked like murder has no statute of limitations, but in the civil world, there are things that would extend the statute. So I think they'd be okay if ultimately they end up pursuing a claim. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say what level of involvement. I see what's being said about Puff Daddy and Diddy's involvement and all this stuff. Who knows at this point? That could be wild speculation too.
Yeah, and I want to point out that you can look on YouTube. I believe this might be Vlad TV, but I was fascinated with this one interview with Tupac's brother, who claims and stated very clearly that after Tupac died, Diddy called him out of the blue to, offer condolences. But the first thing he said before he offered condolences was, "Yo, I just want you to know I didn't have anything to do with the murder of your brother." And he's like, "Cool, didn't really ask, but thank you so much for."
Well, they were having a very high profile dispute at that point. I mean, and
yeah, but come on.
And again, like I get it, but you know what? I mean, there's a tradition in the mafia where the killer is often at the funeral of their victim. So you just never know. So I think we'll see where that goes. Obviously, Diddy has multiple problems right now. I think this thing coming back isn't great news either. But I do think it's worth noting that, Keefe D was there for the past 30 years, all along, just sitting there. And you talked about people really want justice for Tupac. It's also worth noting the other 3 individuals in that vehicle are deceased. One died naturally. I think 2 were eventually killed in unrelated situations. But, over time, the street meted out justice on these individuals, how they were living their lives. And eventually now Keefe D, he had been arrested in between all this too. It wasn't like he was walking around free. He was in jail. Totally. He did not change his ways. He had a get out of jail free card on a murder and his drug operation, and did not change his ways. So who knows? Absolutely. It's never too late, but I don't have a lot of faith in Keefe D turning his life around. Let's put it that way.
Oh my gosh, same here. And while he was being arrested in 2023, like literally taken out of his house in cuffs, he was still bragging about the shooting and being involved with, the biggest scandal that's ever hit Las Vegas. And I also want to point out, before we switch to Delphi, that Suge is making some crazy claims on his recent podcast episode from prison, that the reason that Jennifer Lopez and Ben Affleck are allegedly splitting up, they've never made a statement or anything, but it's because, and I don't necessarily think I believe this, because I don't think the FBI can just do this, but he's claiming the FBI showed Ben Affleck or disclosed some of the footage they found from the raids of Diddy's house in March of 2024. And some of this footage that they found on hard drives or whatever included some pretty shady activities that J-Lo was participating in with Diddy back in the early 2000s. And then he also made the claims that J-Lo lied about the gun belonging to Diddy in the 1999 New York City nightclub shooting, obviously implicated his associate Shine, and Shine went to prison because of, what J-Lo corroborated. So Suge said, "Oh yeah, they told Ben Affleck all of this and they showed him some of this stuff." And I'm like, really? Can the FBI do that? I mean, maybe if they bring in Ben and Jen to, I don't know, sit down and have an interview, but.
Well, so I'm not going to comment on the merits of whether or not what you just said is true, other than to say the FBI could do that. They could call Ben Affleck in and show
them stuff.
Well, they could just say, "Look, we've learned." It could be in the auspices of an interview. Say, what has she ever said to you about these things? This is what we've learned. Which raises another interesting point. I looked at the warrant that was served just before Keefe D was arrested. Mm-hmm. There was a warrant served on a house connected to him. And then I looked at the receipt of inventory and the listing of items found in that warrant. No smoking guns there either. I don't know. Like there's the book and like an article on Tupac. I mean, some really like stuff that certainly doesn't hurt their case, but no smoking gun in that, which I think is worth noting, because I think people remember that's how this all came back to light. Like there was a warrant, a gun was found, and bullets were found, but that gun has not been tied back to the shooting. And
Correct. And just to be clear, I am not the one saying all of that. That is Suge talking on
I
his
know
most
you're not. I
podcast.
know
Yeah,
you're not.
I know. You're like, I'm not going to comment on that.
I'm
like,
not
yeah,
falling in
I
with.
made it up.
I'm
I
not
made it
falling
up.
in. I'm not falling in with Suge. I'm just saying.
Okay, whatever. I'm just saying, God, you're such a lawyer. But no, and just to wrap things up with what I said from the start, where I was wrong on some of my thinking. I initially was like, oh, yeah, great. They'll find the footage, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, and now I'm like, cool. I feel like they are going to have a really hard time placing Keefe D in Las Vegas the night of September 7th, besides the fact that he's admitted to it and he yaps about it, and his wife. I mean, I think it's going to be a tough case to prove, but I'm really hopeful because, like I said, I want justice for Tupac. I mean, I didn't love his music. I like his music, or because it just wasn't like my thing. But what was that movie with Janet Jackson? It was so good.
Poetic Justice.
Poetic Justice. Yes,
Yeah,
he's
I mean,
so
he was
cute.
and he was only 25 years old.
He
Like,
had those big doe eyes.
when you're young, like, and it just seemed like Tupac was around so much longer than he was, and then he was incarcerated. Like, I don't know. He was an artist, but he was a tragic artist, and then met such an untimely end. The guy was just talented. Look, but here's the thing: in their writing, in their music.
Yeah.
These guys in particular, Tupac, Biggie, Diddy, like, they told you who they were. I mean, that's the life they were living. They were genuine, which is why, in a sense, that's why they were successful. They were real.
Yeah.
So in the end, if you live a life that way, you're not going to see past 25. Either you're going to end up in a jail cell or dead. So despite all his talent, it's tragic, and the money, people think, oh, they'll get money, they get off the street. That bull, you are who you are. Money's not going to change. Money's not going to change anything. And the people around you, so it's a tragedy. And I think, like, particularly like 1996, I don't want to date myself too much, but I was a senior in high school. And I just remember thinking that, boy, what a waste of a life and talent to be killed that way so young.
Yeah, I know. And I'm just thinking about this. My brother wanted his song at his wedding when he danced with my mom to be Dear Mama. And she's like,
yeah,
no. She's like, no. Like, doesn't he talk about her being like in jail and dealing with being a crackhead? And my brother's like, yeah, but it's a good song. And she's like, no, the answer is no. That just popped into my head. But yeah, it's you're right. It's a tragedy. And I think I really liked Biggie. And now I'm upset because he's connected with Diddy. And I have a hard time at this point separating things. And like, I'll have playlists on my phone. And what was that song? It came on the other day. It was like, last night, couldn't even get an answer. Remember that one with no? Okay, well, I skipped it.
That's one of Biggie's songs?
No, it was Diddy, but I was just
okay.
Yeah, like, I love Biggie and he's connected to Diddy, and now I can't listen to Diddy because he's just a horrible person. And we've all seen that with our own eyes because of the Cassie footage. So that's not allegedly.
And I give the police a lot of credit here because, like I said, 3 of the 4 in that vehicle are dead. 30 years has gone by, and Vegas PD has gotten a lot of, a lot of shit over the years. I give everybody a lot of credit involved in this prosecution that they're pursuing it. I think that's great, and I think it's important. So
yeah, agreed. And I have a call and an email into the Clarks County Sheriff's Office in Vegas. I want to get a quote. I want to get I know they can't share a lot, but I had a few questions I think maybe they could answer. So hopefully I'll hear back soon. Good. But Keefe D's trial is, as of right now, it's set for November 2024. Hopefully there will be no other delays. There's not a date that I could see for another pretrial hearing. I do think that there's like a 2% chance that he might be able to post bail. Right now, the judge said no, but she's going to think about it. They did lower the bail. He said he had the money, or he has the money. But I think the issue here right now is that, number one, he's proven that he can be paid for murder for hire, allegedly. And number two, they believe that if he gets out, the person that posted this money for him is using him for another documentary and to profit once again off of the death of Tupac. So with that said, let's pivot into Delphi right now with some of these pre-trial hearings that were going down last week. I mean, they were crazy what was being introduced to us that I, like I said, I'm still a little confused. So I'm hoping you can break some of this down for us.
So Abby and Libby's, the prosecution of Richard Allen for the deaths of Abby and Libby in Indiana, there has been a great deal of secrecy in this case. There's been a lot of information that didn't come out. Obviously, the crime scenes got leaked, and that was a whole major issue. But several months ago, maybe even over a year ago, there were allegations that Richard Allen allegedly made admissions in this case. And the context or the quotes of those admissions had never been released by the prosecution. So you learn so much about these cases in those pretrial filings. And we had anticipated, even when we filmed that Crime Nation special last year, that the pretrial filings would reveal the content of the admissions. And they did. The defense attorneys for Richard Allen are trying to get certain admissions he made. They total 60 plus, by the way, thrown out, not because they were coerced by law enforcement, not because they were made in violation of his rights, but because they say Richard Allen was in the throes of some mental breakdown when he made those statements. Now, there's no question Richard Allen has had a tough time in jail and that he have been mentally compromised. However, or has had mental difficulty. However, the prosecution says these statements were made in these coming to Jesus moments, and they were made to his wife and mother. And the statements were basically like, I killed Abby and Libby. I used a box cutter to kill them. He told another inmate. He said he dumped the box cutter in the garbage at CVS in their dumpster. He says that the motivation for the crime was a sexual assault in nature. All of these things do not appear to be the statements of someone who's in a mental episode. There's someone who's trying to come clean, and oftentimes it happens. So they're trying to get them suppressed to say he was in no position to make those statements or was mentally compromised. I think those statements are going to come in. I think that, and there were over 150 hours of recorded phone calls that the detective listened to, testified about these statements. They're going to come in. Now, the defense is going to be allowed to challenge them by saying, isn't it true that Richard Allen was in the throes of a mental breakdown when he said that? And in fact, he'd given up because he's incarcerated, just admitting to the crime at that point, and people falsely admit. So I think it goes to the weight of the evidence, but they're coming in.
Can you go back? Something you said he was having a hard time in prison. I don't know anything about that. Did something happen to him in prison?
Oh yeah, he had a tremendous, so he was isolated. He'd been moved around to different facilities.
Okay.
So number one, he had child victims. It's clear that the nature of the crime may have been sexually motivated. So an individual like Richard Allen in a case like this would be held in isolation. Isolation in prison, okay, when you're put in the hole, is a punitive measure, but oftentimes it's a protective measure. And in the case of Richard Allen, he was held in isolation, put on suicide watch, wasn't eating, had a tremendous weight loss. If you look at the Richard Allen that was arrested versus the Richard Allen who made his first court appearance, he's wheelchair bound. He looked like he was dying. He has since made a comeback. To a certain extent, but that's what was happening with him.
Okay, and what about possible cell phone evidence that may not put him there when Abby and Libby were murdered?
So, so there's been an indication that there may be cell phone evidence that puts him elsewhere at the time of the murder. However, Richard admitted to being on the trail and on the bridge that day and leaving shortly before. So he was there by his own admission. Whether or not he was there at 2:02 p.m. is another question. So again, you end up in Karen Reed, Koberger land. What does the cell phone say it? When does it say it? Is that the kind of thing you can argue about? Sure. So the case against Richard Allen, take his admissions out, was never
Mhm.
super strong. Whether or not he was bridge guy, it was never super strong, in my opinion. I
Okay.
suspect he's the person responsible. I don't know that they're going to get there beyond a reasonable doubt. Not only because the case against him is weak, it's because the case against others is also strong. So you have the Odinistic theory, the Odinist cult,
Yeah.
which is a little far fetched, but it's there, and that could chip away against the case against Richard Allen. Then you have the case against Ron Logan, the now deceased Ron Logan, whose property abutted the bridge property. He has a girlfriend, a former girlfriend, who says bridge guy is Ron Logan. She could tell by the look, the
Right.
clothes, and the voice. So those are things that you can bet the defense is trying very hard to get the Odinistic ritual. We did a video on
Yeah.
Don Perlmutter's testimony, and the fact that this is not just satanic panic. There's some heft to this claim. I don't think this was a ritualistic killing, because my experience, maybe my biases, oftentimes the simplest explanation is exactly what happened. I think it's a convenient theory for the defense, but you can bet it's going to do damage on getting to that reasonable doubt standard.
Right. And if this is, this is answer how you're comfortable, but do you think it was Richard Allen?
Yes, I suspect it was Richard Allen, and his admissions don't help. So I
Right.
I do suspect it was Richard Allen. Another question whether or not I believe they're going to convict him. Now, remember one thing about the Odinistic theory too. It's not just like it was just thrown out there. The defense has identified 4 individuals with some connection to the case, which
Yeah.
any defense attorney will tell you. It's one thing to come up with a theory, but boy, if you can come up with another person, and those individuals have alibis and punch cards and things of that nature. So I don't know. I think that, in my opinion, what I expect to come out, and there was a motion filed to allow for the defense to put on that component of evidence as well. So
Yeah.
they're fighting to keep the admissions out, and they're fighting to put Odinism in. Okay, if the judge is following the law, as I see it, the admissions are coming in, but they're going to allow for cross-examination on the mental health and the mental health of Richard Allen at the time he made those statements. And it goes to the weight of the evidence. The question of whether or not Odinism is coming in, I believe the right decision is the judge should let it in.
Mm.
And again, if it comes in, the prosecution will have the opportunity to take it apart. I don't see how it's kept out. Why would it be kept out? They've identified a plausible alternate theory. They provided an expert. They provided 4 individuals tangentially related to the case that may be part of it. And they provided former and retired investigators that said, yeah, we were looking into this. It's relevant. How is it
Yeah.
prejudicial either? I mean, it's coming in. So, you heard it here first. Those are my
Yeah.
predictions.
No, also, like, I feel like, isn't it generally kind of easier just to blame the dead guy? And I know that there's some points around that, and there's
You
some
mean
solid
Langdon
facts,
or,
but
Ron
I'm
Logan?
saying
I mean,
I'm saying Ron Logan, like, it's easy just to blame the dead guy, as the defense, I'm saying. So I just,
well,
right
but,
or
but
no?
it's the dead guy with the same size and shape as Bridge Guy, the dead guy who said he went to get
Yeah.
koi fish or something, and his alibi was a lie. It's a dead guy who was violent with a girlfriend in the past. It's a dead guy who that girlfriend says that's his voice saying "guys down the hill." So
But then
it's not just the
you
dead guy.
still
It's
think that Richard Allen is probably the guy, but this all makes sense too.
right, which is why even if Richard Allen's the guy, I don't know that they're going to get a conviction.
Is it possible that they work together? I mean, again, and keep in mind, I don't know this case very well. Clearly, that's why I'm asking questions. I just know the top level.
Well, the question whether or not it's possible, there are a lot of theories that this involved more than one person.
Yeah,
Um, it's possible, but remember that video footage, there's one person on that bridge.
right.
And
And
if
I did.
that person is armed with a gun, which they found the bullet casing as if the gun was cocked, right?
Yeah,
They can coerce two young girls off that bridge and down the hill. So you don't need a second person. And, again, so your question as to whether or not it's possible, yes, I don't think it was
yeah,
likely.
yeah. And I just looking at this case from the outside, and it's so heartbreaking. And it's the same with the Idaho murders. It's like you have this suspect, and I understand that we do want to uphold their constitutional rights. They're US citizens. They deserve the right to this, and this. But it's like when everything points to them and these precious lives were stolen in these horrific ways, it's just such a gut punch. You know what I mean? It's like, why do we have to hear about all the reasons why it's probably not them when it's like everything points to the fact that it is. So it just makes me sad, even
I
sadder
just
for
think
the
I,
families.
I agree. I just think the case
Yeah.
against Kohlberger is a hell of a lot stronger than the case against Richard Allen. But
Oh,
I
you
will
do.
say this:
You
yeah,
do.
hell yes. But
Okay.
I want to say this: there is. I always say like I want to. Of course, I want to say. I'm just going to say that's lawyer stuff. But there is a lot on the Richard Allen prosecution that isn't public yet. So it's hard to say. Like I'm speculating a little bit, but there's a lot that has not been made public yet that will be made public in their presentation. Um, so, but
Yeah.
again, I just think that as I said, I think it's him. I don't know that they're going to get there.
Yeah, and I say this every time, but I need to sit down and do my research on both of these cases so I can have more of an opinion here and possibly fight you on some of this. Right now, I don't feel equipped to fight you. I'm always down though to I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Bring it
I
on.
am
Read
though.
the stuff. And the other thing, I look at Richard Allen and what happened to him when he became incarcerated. By the way, he's never been in trouble before, right? And
Like
physically, he
Koberger.
looked like he was dying, right? That's how an innocent man would be acting. And
Oh
that
no.
jumped out to me too. It's like if you were accused of such a horrible thing and had nothing to do with it, that's how you would be acting. And like, and I don't know. I don't think that that's lost on people either. Although you could make the same argument and say, well, or somebody who got caught would be acting that way too because they realize my life is over. So I'm just saying, like, if he's the hardened killer he's supposed to
Yeah.
be, that he doesn't get broken that easily. That's what I think.
That's interesting. Okay. I mean, and here's the other thing. Like everybody wants to they want justice, right? So they want someone to point the finger at. When you have someone here, Richard Allen, everybody wants him to be guilty because that's all we've got right now. That's all we've got to get these sweet little girls justice is this guy right here. So I think maybe sometimes that can get lost on a lot of us. You know
Oh
what I
yeah,
mean?
I mean
Like,
they want to put somebody in
yeah,
that chair and blame them, but that's not. I mean, my God, convicting somebody who's not responsible. I'm not saying Richard Allen's not, but that's not justice either. I mean, that's it.
right.
That's the worst. Then the person actually responsible is getting away with it.
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, we'll have to do a follow up on this for sure. And again, when I'm a little bit more well versed with this one and Idaho, and also I started listening to the Howard Blum book. Now I forget what it's called. It's on my phone now, but that's God.
When night comes falling.
Thank you. Yes, I had to kind of turn it off because I was listening to it before bed, and I was like, oh, this is not going to make me sleep very well at all.
Yeah, it was well done. And as I said, I don't know that I learned anything new other than it was a great tying together of what's been reported out there. So I
Yeah.
recommend anybody who's into that case check that book out. It was and Howard Bloom's a great writer.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was keeping my attention. I just started to get nightmares. So I was Like, okay, yeah, move on. Well, guys, if you have any cases that you want us to cover, please just shoot us an email, shoot us a tweet, whatever you want. We are so open to hearing about what you guys want to hear. So, Jarrett, thank you so much. This was great. We'll be live again next Wednesday, so you can catch us then. 8 p.m. and we'll be dropping in our little mini casts along the way. So thanks everyone for supporting Prime Time Crime.